During one gloomy day, inside what looked like an abandoned hospital deep in the woods, a boy named Ryzen Tosaka was seen going through a stack of old medical records. The moment he understood what he was reading, his face twisted in shock. Unable to accept it, he threw the file against the wall. Overwhelmed by the weight of his emotions, Ryzen slowly began to break down. Suddenly, he froze. Footsteps echoed through the hallway, growing closer with every second. A deep sense of fear crawled up his spine. Unnatural events had been surrounding him for a long time now, and at this very moment, he knew he was being hunted by the monster he had been running from. As the door creaked open, Ryzen had already accepted his fate. He didn't even try to fight back. A dark, floating entity drifted toward him. Its face was blurred, but it clearly had the shape of a long-haired girl. With a defeated expression, Ryzen weakly asked the creature to take it easy on him, believing it would make him happy if she did. But the creature showed no mercy. Without hesitation, she tore into his flesh using her long, sharp fangs. In an instant, her form twisted and morphed into something far worse, a horrifying, spider-like creature. At that point, Ryzen knew there was no escape. This monster, however, was not unfamiliar to him. In fact, he clearly remembered the first time he encountered it. If his memory served him right, it all began during the summer of his first year in the village, after he left his hometown. One sunny morning in his dorm, Ryzen was suddenly awakened by the loud noise of his air conditioner. He tried to fix it, only to realize it was clogged by a massive spider living inside. Since it was still early, he decided to freshen up and prepare for school first. While getting ready, his thoughts drifted back to the spider. Given its size, he knew it couldn't have come from the air conditioner. Still, with school on his mind and no time to deal with it, he pushed the thought aside. As he turned on the news to catch updates about the recent disappearance of Professor Seigo Kusuninoi from Uio University, he noticed something strange. The side of his bed was now completely covered in spider webs. That didn't make any sense. He was sure they weren't there the night before. The idea that such a massive spider could create all of this in just a few hours while he slept was both fascinating and terrifying. With no time left, Ryzen rushed out to school, even jokingly saying goodbye to his new spider pet. At first, he believed the spider would eventually leave on its own, but it didn't. The spider webs kept appearing every single day. Slowly, worry and curiosity began to grow inside him. What kind of spider was this anyway? Determined to find answers, he searched through books and articles in the university library, but found nothing. In the end, Ryzen gave up. After all, humans tend to adapt to things they experience repeatedly. Still, he wondered how long that would last. Days passed, and Ryzen gradually got used to the spider sharing his apartment. One evening, after returning from work, he checked the news again. Another disappearance had occurred in Tokyo. According to the headline, the missing schoolgirl lived dangerously close to his dorm. His thoughts were suddenly interrupted when his alarm rang. He had plans today, a date with his girlfriend. Ryzen had been dating Kiyoko for a month now, and he felt it was finally time to deepen their relationship. As he packed his bag, something stopped him. Spiderwebs clung to the doorway. Thinking it was just an accident, he ignored it and left. He didn't realize that something in the shadows was watching him, angry. After a short drive, Ryzen and Kiyoko arrived at the aquarium. Seeing her smile made him genuinely happy. Kiyoko, with her innocent charm, was amazed by everything around her. She even said it felt like they were at the bottom of the ocean, since this place had always been one of her dreams to visit. The joy in her sparkling eyes was impossible to miss. Watching her, Ryzen couldn't help but wonder why someone like her was even dating him. To be honest, he still couldn't believe it himself. Lost in thought, he barely noticed Kiyoko speaking to him. She told him she was worried about him and reminded him that he once mentioned wanting to talk about something important. Still, knowing how rare their dates were due to their busy schedules, she encouraged him to forget his worries for now and just enjoy the day. And he did. By nightfall, after dropping Kiyoko off at the station, Ryzen headed back home. His heart felt light, replaying the moments they had shared. But the moment he reached his apartment, his happiness vanished. The front door was completely covered in spiderwebs. He nearly tripped over them. And just like that, his good mood disappeared in an instant. However, it seemed that the worst was still yet to come. At first, Ryzen thought the spiderwebs were only covering his front door. But as soon as he stepped inside his apartment, he froze. The entire place was completely covered in webs. It had never been this bad before. What made it even more disturbing was the fact that this amount of webbing should have been impossible to create in just a few hours. As he looked closer, he noticed something else. These webs were different. They felt wrong. It was almost as if someone had lashed out in anger, leaving chaos behind. The webs gave off that exact feeling. Then, something even more terrifying caught his eye. Human hair. Ryzen stared at it in disbelief. This was no small matter, and his thoughts began to spiral. He tried to convince himself that everything was fine, that he was just overthinking things. But no matter how much he tried to lie to himself, he knew the truth. He was scared. None of this made sense. He hadn't seen any signs of an intruder. And since the windows were still tightly closed, he was certain of one thing. The spider was still inside the apartment. What troubled him the most was the hair. Still, being alone in such a large space, he tried one last time to calm himself. Maybe the webs were just dirty. Maybe it only looked like hair. After finally settling his nerves, Ryzen decided to go to sleep, hoping that everything would be normal the next day. But that hope didn't last long. Just as he was about to close his eyes, a cold breeze passed through his bedroom. Suddenly, a black silhouette shaped like a girl appeared right in front of him. Terrified, Ryzen shouted, "Who's there?" A girl with long, silky black hair stepped forward. Her beauty was undeniable, and Ryzen found himself staring in shock. Her red, shining eyes captivated him in a way he had never felt before. Before he even realized it, the girl bent over him, her movements slow and deliberate. Without warning, she kissed his neck and licked it with her wet tongue. Ryzen was completely stunned, struggling to understand what was happening. Seeing that she was wearing a school uniform, he tried to stay calm, thinking she might be troubled or lost. That was his mistake. Suddenly, she bit him with her fangs. The pain was sharp, and he realized she was sucking his blood. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then he felt something else, something entering his body. As he tried to push her away, she suddenly kissed him on the lips. His mind screamed to move, but his body refused to listen. It was as if he no longer had control over himself. His body began to move on its own. The girl seemed to enjoy it. Ryzen tried to fight back. He didn't want this. If he gave in, it felt like he was betraying Kiyoko and everything they shared. For what felt like an endless minute, the two remained entangled. Then, suddenly, control returned to him. He immediately tried to escape, but before he could even reach the door, the girl stopped him with her webs. Once again, his body froze. She refused to let him go. The web tightened, and she pulled him back. They began kissing again, and this time, he had no strength left to resist. What hurt the most was realizing that part of him was starting to enjoy it. He found her beautiful, charismatic. But deep down, he knew the truth. This was not a human. This was a monster. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the body of a second-year student named Mayara Yuko from Ashinosaka City, who had been missing for some time, was finally discovered. According to the news, something was horribly wrong with the corpse. All of her organs, including her brain, had been removed. The police immediately launched an investigation into this brutal murder. But the question remained, would they ever uncover the truth behind her death? For Ryzen, however, that night marked the moment when the charming monster trapped him completely, unable to move, unable to fight, and unable to save himself. The next day at the police department, Officer Daisuke Ono met with Yoshiaki Matsui, the department's lead forensic specialist, to review the autopsy results. To his disappointment, even Matsui couldn't reach a conclusion. It was the first time he had ever seen a body in such an unexplainable condition. No matter how much effort the investigators put in, they still couldn't determine the original appearance of the missing girl. Most of her internal organs were gone. Parts of her bones had been cut away. Only one arm and one leg remained, with just a thin strip of skin still connecting them to the body. Even imagining it was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Mayara Yuko's corpse looked like the leftovers of a wild animal's meal. According to Daisuke Ono's theory, the murderer may have devoured most of the body to prevent the murder weapon from being identified. By destroying the evidence, the killer could erase any clear clues. While this theory sounded reasonable, there was no way to prove it. At this stage, nothing could be confirmed. Neither the crime scene nor the corpse showed any traces that matched an animal. Even if something had eaten her and erased its tracks, there was no solid evidence to support that claim. Yoshiaki Matsui believed the cause of death was most likely extreme blood loss. A large blood stain had been found in the alley where the crime occurred. Because of this, there were still many unanswered questions surrounding Mayara's death. To be certain, Matsui wanted to continue investigating. To be honest, he personally believed this case might involve something far beyond human understanding, possibly a ghost, or even a monster. However, Officer Ono couldn't bring himself to believe in such ideas. Refusing to entertain superstition, he collected the autopsy report and prepared to leave. Before doing so, he reminded Matsui to contact him immediately if he discovered anything new. Once Ono left, Matsui was alone. He was convinced that what happened to Mayara was not the work of a human being. As he stared up at the ceiling of his office, something caught his eye, a spider crawling above him. He suddenly realized that he had been seeing spiders everywhere that day. Feeling exhausted, Matsui decided to call it a night. He packed up his things and walked toward the door, ready to go home and rest. But something horrifying awaited him. The moment he opened the door, he he was met with thousands of spiders swarming on the other side. In a split second, Matsui was overwhelmed and killed, without even getting the chance to fight back. Meanwhile, back at Ryzen's apartment, the sun was already shining, yet Ryzen was still trapped with the girl who had been using his body all night. No matter how hard he tried to move, his body remained pinned down. His blood was being drained, and once again he felt something entering his body. This routine had been repeating for several days. At this point, Ryzen had almost accepted his fate. When the girl finally stopped, he tried to talk to her. He asked why she was doing this to him, hoping to understand her intentions. But no matter what he said, she showed no sign of understanding his words. Failing to communicate was bad enough, but Ryzen had a bigger problem. While the girl clung tightly to his side, he turned on the TV to watch the news. He already knew what was coming. On the second morning after meeting her, he had seen the report. His heart nearly stopped in fear. The girl holding him had the exact same face as Mayara Yuko, the victim shown on the screen. But that was impossible. According to the news, Mayara was already dead. So how could she be here with him? That question consumed his mind. He tried to think of explanations. Maybe she was Mayara's sister. Maybe a classmate who looked exactly like her. But none of it made sense. If that were true, she wouldn't be standing here so casually. The uniform was the same. The face was identical. At that moment, Ryzen finally understood. Something was terribly wrong. Before he could think any further, it started again. His body stopped obeying him as the girl climbed on top of him once more. This time, however, he noticed something new. For just a brief moment, he saw the image of a giant spider. Ryzen's body no longer belonged to him. No matter how hard he tried to resist, he couldn't move. He was pinned to the bed, frozen, unable to fight back even a little. The girl began her nightly ritual once again. Meanwhile, on the news, the newscaster announced that Yoshiaki Matsui, a 38-year-old man who worked in the police prefecture, had been missing for 20 days. Of course, the truth behind his disappearance was already known. Back at the apartment, Ryzen showed no signs of resistance anymore. No matter what he tried, he couldn't escape the woman. Every attempt failed. His body would be controlled by an unknown force and dragged back to the room. He even tried locking her out. But no matter what he did, she always reappeared in the same place the very next moment. Calling for help was useless. Whenever the police arrived, she vanished without a trace. Because of this, Ryzen found himself living every day with the monster, who smiled as she held him close. At this point, the only thing on Ryzen's mind was the truth. Why was she doing this to him? Was she drawing energy from his blood? Was that the reason she kissed him so deeply, paralyzing his body every time? Her kisses only grew more intense with each passing day. Then, during one of those moments, Ryzen's phone rang. It was Kiyoko. He immediately answered the call. From her voice alone, it was clear that she was angry and worried. She scolded him for not going to school for weeks and for ignoring her messages. Ryzen tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop. His friends were worried too, and Kyoko's voice trembled as she spoke. He told her he was fine. He made excuses, saying he hadn't been feeling well and didn't want to worry anyone. But Kiyoko snapped back, telling him that ignoring her only made things worse. Hearing her upset because of him hurt Ryzen deeply. Still, he had no choice. There was no way he could explain what was really happening. Then came the worst possible news. Kiyoko said she was nearby and wanted to visit him. She even offered to stay the night and take care of him. Her kindness only made things more dangerous. In the back of his mind, Ryzen knew one thing clearly. If Kiyoko came inside that apartment, their relationship would be over. As he desperately tried to think of another excuse, the monster girl smiled quietly. It was as if she believed this was the perfect chance to tear them apart. Before he could stop it, it was already too late. Kiyoko was standing right in front of his door. She entered the apartment without hesitation and offered to make him lunch. Since she planned to stay the night, she said she needed to change in his room. Ryzen immediately tried to stop her. This only made Kiyoko suspicious. She asked him if there was something inside the room that she wasn't supposed to see. After a moment of silence, she teased him with a flustered smile, joking that maybe he had been looking at something inappropriate. She reassured him, saying she understood these things as a woman, but as his girlfriend, she still wanted to know how he was feeling. Before he could react, Kiyoko opened the door and rushed inside. Ryzen panicked, warning her that it was dangerous. But there was nothing there. Later, while Kiyoko was taking a bath, Ryzen stood frozen, wondering where the girl had gone. No silhouette, no presence. He realized something then. The monster hid herself whenever someone else was around. Trying not to worry Kiyoko, he forced himself to calm down. After a while, Kiyoko finished bathing. When she returned, she found Ryzen sitting quietly, reading a journal about the recent serial murder cases in their area. Kiyoko then shared some information she had heard about the case. According to rumors, the person who was captured was actually innocent. Because of that, fear had spread through the town once again. People believed it was no longer safe to walk alone at night. Kiyoko also mentioned something else that disturbed her. Based on what she knew, one of the victims was a high school student. In that case, all of the victim's internal organs had been removed. This shocked Ryzen. He couldn't understand how that was even possible. According to the reports, the body had already been eaten. Nothing about it made sense. Trying to lighten the mood, Kiyoko suggested that they should go to bed. However, what happened next was something Ryzen never expected. As they lay together, the warmth of Kyoko's body filled the bed. Despite her innocent appearance, she was clearly excited to be lying beside him. She slowly pressed closer, while Ryzen grew more and more nervous. For normal couples, this would have been natural. But because of the monster, Ryzen had to stay alert. When Kiyoko tried to take the first step and move things further, Ryzen stopped her. Not because he didn't want to, but because he knew what would happen if he let it continue. Just then, he sensed it. The monster was about to appear. Fearing for Kyoko's life, Ryzen suddenly hugged her tightly and shouted, begging the monster to stop. Kiyoko, not understanding what was happening, believed his reaction was meant for her. Because of his desperate action, the monster disappeared. But the damage had already been done. Kiyoko was deeply hurt and embarrassed. She quietly packed her things and prepared to leave. Ryzen tried to explain, but she couldn't even bring herself to look at him. She told him she needed time to clear her thoughts. Then she admitted that maybe he was right, that it was too early for them to go that far. She said she had simply rushed things. Ryzen tried again to explain himself, but Kiyoko was too embarrassed to continue the conversation. Still, before leaving, she reassured him. She told him not to feel guilty and said she hoped he wouldn't start hating her. She confessed that she loved him. Ryzen returned her feelings, hugging her tightly as she stepped out the door. Even though the day didn't end the way either of them wanted, Kiyoko forced a smile and walked away. As soon as she left, Ryzen was alone again in his dark apartment, filled with guilt. Before he could even process what had happened, the monster girl appeared once more. As expected, she did to him what he had refused to do with Kiyoko. On her way home, Kiyoko felt relieved knowing that Ryzen didn't hate her. Still, after what happened, she decided to be more careful with her actions from now on. Late at night, as she walked through the quiet streets, she suddenly felt something wrap around her wrist, a spider web. She quickly brushed it away, thinking it must have caught onto her when she left Ryzen's apartment, but for some reason she felt uneasy. It felt like someone, or something, was watching her from the shadows. Remembering all the recent disappearances, she hurried home, unaware that something terrible awaited her. As for Ryzen, he was always alone, and it seemed that would never change. Long ago, back when he was still in high school, something dark and traumatic had happened to him. Something that shaped everything he had become. Back then, a man named Akutsu Jr. tried to befriend Ryzen. Looking back, Akutsu had helped him far more than he ever expected. Just remembering those days made Ryzen realize how harsh life had been on him for a long time. He once believed that everything would eventually change. But now, with this monster girl suddenly appearing and ruining his life once again, Ryzen began to wonder just how cruel the world could really be. Weeks had passed since the girl appeared, and Ryzen was starting to grow irritated by how clingy she had become. For the first time in a long while, he told her to stay away from him, if only for a minute. All she ever did was hug him every morning, and no matter what he said, she was never satisfied. When he finally had a moment to breathe, Ryzen checked his phone to see if Kiyoko had sent him a message. To his relief, she had replied. It seemed she was no longer dwelling on what happened then. Still, Ryzen wanted to apologize properly and do something for her, but even that felt impossible. The monster girl couldn't stay away from him for more than a minute. In the end, Ryzen still had no idea what this woman was thinking. Even after being together for weeks, he knew nothing about her, why she was in his room or what she was injecting into him whenever she sucked his blood. That was also why her face looked identical to the girl who had been murdered weeks earlier. Ryzen was overwhelmed with questions. Waiting for her to speak was pointless. If he wanted answers, he would have to investigate her identity himself. On top of that, his refrigerator was nearly empty. He decided it was finally time to go out and buy groceries. Fortunately, he noticed something important. The girl didn't seem to hate him at all. So he tried begging her to let him leave just for a short while, but she didn't understand his words. He even showed her a map and tried to explain where he was going, but nothing worked. Then Ryzen thought of something. Every time he tried to chase her out, she always returned to his room. That gave him an idea. If survival was the goal, then perhaps he should do the opposite. He decided to invite her to go outside with him. After observing her behavior, Ryzen realized something strange. Whenever someone else entered his room, like when Kiyoko visited, the girl disappeared like smoke. She never showed herself to anyone but him. If his theory was correct, then from a human perspective, only Ryzen could see her. With that in mind, he was finally able to leave the apartment and go grocery shopping. While browsing the aisles, Ryzen suddenly bumped into an old friend, Akutsu Jr. Since it had been a long time since they last met, Akutsu invited him over to his apartment for a drink to catch up. He also admitted that he had been worried about Ryzen, since he hadn't seen him around campus lately. Ryzen also looked pale, almost sick. Akutsu had no idea his friend was being haunted by a monster disguised as a young girl. As they talked, Akutsu casually asked about Ryzen's relationship with Kiyoko. Like any curious guy, he joked about whether Ryzen had kissed her during their aquarium date. Hearing that made Ryzen feel guilty again. His relationship with Kiyoko had already been damaged because of what happened that night. Thinking it was just a small lover's quarrel, Akutsu tried to cheer him up. He even started bragging about how experienced he was with romance, promising to give Ryzen tips so his next date wouldn't fail. Akutsu could be a bit much at times, but Ryzen was grateful to have him as a friend. They talked for hours. Eventually, Akutsu noticed they were out of cigarettes and offered to buy more. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps more than you think. And if you'd like to support me further, consider joining my Patreon. I'm not making much from the channel at the moment, so every bit of support truly means a lot. You'll get ad-free videos and shoutouts as a thank you for helping me keep this going. Now, back to the video. While he was gone, Ryzen stepped out onto the balcony to get some fresh air. The cold night breeze wrapped around his skin. Nearby, Akutsu's neighbor was playing the guitar, soft music filling the background. As he listened, Ryzen suddenly thought about the monster girl again. He realized that maybe she wouldn't reveal herself in crowded places. Still, the idea that she could transform into a spider and follow him anywhere sent a chill through his body. What if he could never escape her? For now, he clung to one hope. Maybe, as long as he stayed with other people, the monster wouldn't appear. At least that's what he wanted to believe. Just as his heart began to calm down, something unexpected happened. A spider suddenly appeared out of nowhere. This time, the spider moved toward Akutsu Jr., Ryzen's friend next door. Before Ryzen could react, Akutsu Jr. arrived, bringing fresh packs of cigarettes for them. But then Ryzen noticed something that made his stomach drop, a spider web clinging to Akutsu Jr.'s shoulder. He knew immediately that no matter what he did, the monster wouldn't go away. Worried that his friend might be pulled into this nightmare, Ryzen asked where the web had come from. Akutsu explained that he had taken a shortcut on the way over and got caught in a web. Ryzen tried to calm himself. Spiders didn't scare him, except for that one girl. As long as it wasn't her, he told himself, everything would be fine. But deep down, his body betrayed him. Soon things began to spiral out of control. Ryzen found himself outside his apartment, confronted with a horrifying scene. Dead bodies were scattered everywhere. Some were missing legs, others crushed. The worst sight of all was a body wrapped entirely in spiderweb, his own. Ryzen's nightmare reached its peak and he woke up suddenly. It had been just a dream. After drinking heavily the night before, both Akutsu Jr. and Ryzen had been knocked out. Yet the monster girl had carried out her usual nightly routine with Ryzen. Now, as she sucked his blood on the balcony, Akutsu Jr. woke up. Confused, he asked Ryzen what was going on. But Ryzen had already lost himself in despair, desperate to escape the monster. Unable to explain what was happening, Akutsu didn't understand the situation and tried to calm him. Panic gripped Ryzen. To make matters worse, the monster girl had started trying to speak. Knowing the danger, Ryzen decided he had to leave immediately. When Akutsu asked what was happening, Ryzen simply said something urgent had come up and ran. He realized that staying with others wouldn't solve anything. As he rushed home, he thought about staying away from Kiyoko too. He didn't want to put his friends or loved ones in danger. This monster was no ordinary threat. It was deadly. Passing by the playground, Ryzen's fears were confirmed. The neighbor who had been singing earlier lay dead, tied and hanging from the playground grills. Part of his internal organs had been removed, just like in the other murder. Everything was starting to make sense. Ryzen's stomach churned. He remembered a case involving a high school girl whose internal organs had been removed. At that moment, he finally understood who the real culprit behind the mysterious murders was. Knowing things were spiraling out of control, Ryzen decided to speak with his uncle, Dasaki, who was a police officer. During dinner, Dasaki prepared hot pot for them, trying to make the conversation lighter. As soon as Ryzen asked about recent incidents in town, Dasaki's face fell. He looked defeated. The chances of catching this serial killer are getting slimmer, Dasaki admitted. And to make things worse, the chief is criticizing me for risking my life in the field. The forensics team, they aren't much help either. For a moment, even the hot pot lost its appeal, weighed down by the horrors of the murders. Dasaki then glanced at Ryzen and wondered why his nephew was so interested in these cases. But seeing how determined Ryzen was, he decided to tell him everything he knew. In total, there were 6 victims that Ryzen had learned about so far. The first victim was an honorary member of the Okada Shingo 37 construction company. The cause of death appeared to involve an industrial machine, so it wasn't widely discussed at first. The second victim was Mayara Yuko, age 17. A few days before her body was found, the police had received a missing person report. The report noted that all her internal organs had been removed, but the description barely captured the horror. Her body looked as if it had been preyed upon by some monstrous creature. Dasaki found the case just as strange. Forensics suggested that the injuries were so unusual that they could almost be the work of a ghost or monster. The third victim had their hands and feet cut off, which were then placed in a university atrium. The fourth victim's limbs were arranged as if for some kind of ritual, and the torso was holding its severed head. The fifth victim's body had been dissected evenly and scattered across a road with no care whatsoever. And then there was the sixth victim. Hearing these horrific accounts, Ryzen asked his uncle if it was possible that all the murders were done by the same person. Dasaki paused, then noted a disturbing connection. Starting from Mayara, all the victims shared a similar pattern. Internal organs were removed. Some organs, including the brain, had been taken from 4 of the victims. The third victim's stomach was missing. The fourth victim's liver was removed. The fifth victim was missing a lung and kidneys. Despite all of this, no one could determine the killer's motive. Was it a madman, a pervert with an organ fetish, or something else? Dasaki was certain that, despite what others in the office believed, these crimes were impossible to attribute to a ghost or monster. But Raisin already knew the truth. These murders were not the work of a human. The entity was something else entirely, something pretending to look human. Raisin realized that as soon as Dasaki arrived, the monster would vanish and hide somewhere. Or perhaps there was more to the story than he could yet understand. Not wanting to reveal too much, Raisin kept his knowledge to himself. He knew his uncle wouldn't believe him so easily. As they began eating, Dasaki received a call. Another victim had been discovered. The seventh. Watching his uncle leave, Raisin felt a pang of guilt. He felt sorry for him. Though he couldn't say anything about the murders, he was certain the monster was behind them. As soon as Dasaki left, Raisin went to his bedroom. Just as he expected, the monster girl was waiting for him. She hugged him, and he wondered where she had been before arriving. When the neighbor was killed, the news had already reported the seventh victim, yet Raisin couldn't find a trace of the monster. Was it all a coincidence? Or was he overthinking things? There was no evidence to answer that question. Raisin didn't know what to do about her, but one thing was certain: if she ever hurt someone he loved, he wouldn't hesitate to stop her, by any means necessary. And yet every day she returned to him. This time her movements were more intense, and Raisin felt increasingly uncomfortable. He felt hopeless. The way she manipulated him, mimicking the actions of lovers, was unbearable. And the worst part, he hadn't done any of this with Kiyoko, his real girlfriend. That made the experience feel even more unbearable. However, no matter what he does, he can't seem to fight it at all. While he trembles in fear and anger, this girl is literally trembling with joy. Meanwhile, somewhere in the university, Kiyoko and Junior were able to bump into each other in the same class. Since this was the only time they could talk, Junior immediately grabbed the opportunity to ask Kiyoko about Raisin. While she worked on one of her paintings, Junior informed her that he had happened to meet Raisin the other day and invited him to his apartment for a drink. But the next series of events shocked Junior to the core. He tried to summarize everything to Kiyoko, stating that Raisin had been acting strangely that day. On top of that, their discovery of the murdered victim made the situation even worse. Seeing worry in Kiyoko's eyes, Junior immediately assured her that Raisin was fine and that the police had already questioned him. Although witnessing the dismembered body had already traumatized Junior, seeing how distressed Raisin had been that night made him wonder what was actually happening. No matter how they thought about it, Raisin's behavior was definitely strange, and Kiyoko could not deny it either. The day she had visited his apartment, she had felt the same eerie vibe. Usually entering someone's room doesn't create such a feeling, but when Kiyoko stepped into Raisin's room, that exact sensation hit her. Raisin, known by everyone as a happy-go-lucky guy who always smiles, was suddenly just afraid. For some reason, both Kiyoko and Junior noticed that Raisin had become strange and seemed utterly terrified. This behavior had apparently started 2 weeks ago, the same day authorities found the third victim in the bizarre murder case. Since Raisin's situation was getting out of hand, Kiyoko decided to pay him a visit after class to check on him. Junior agreed it was a good idea, fearing that if they didn't regularly see him, he might be the next person to disappear suddenly. All in all, they knew they could only do what they could for now, and there was no other way to help. For the moment, since they were still working on their art class project, Junior went on to observe Kiyoko's work. Kiyoko explained that this painting was not just a forest bath, but an expression of air. For her, it wasn't only the air itself that made up the world, it was the composition of its components. Expressing those components through color was her favorite way of painting. The gray part represented oxygen, while the yellow represented carbon dioxide. She also planned to include many tiny particles scattered throughout, drawing them in as much detail as possible. As they continued to chat, Junior suddenly noticed a bunch of eerie paintings hidden behind the curtains. Taking a closer look, he was shocked to see they were more gory than creative. Kiyoko explained that this was the work of Fukutang, one of the students. Based on what she knew, he often painted this kind of disturbing work. For him, death and destruction symbolized life and creation. While these subjects were somewhat common in artistic minds, the detail in one of the paintings looked exactly like the image of Junior's neighbor's dead body. This shocked Junior to the core. He immediately asked Kiyoko how to contact Fukutang, wanting to ask him something important. During one sunny day, Ryzen and his older brother went fishing. As they were about to head home, something beyond Ryzen's wildest imagination happened. His older brother was stabbed mercilessly by an unknown man while trying to save him. Ryzen looked at his dying brother's body, wishing that he could have taken his place. His brother weakly asked why Ryzen was the one alive. Why not both of them? As Ryzen felt increasingly distressed, he suddenly woke up from the dream. Realizing it had been just a nightmare, he felt immediate relief. He knew well that his older brother would never say such a thing. As he starts to feel down, the monster girl reaches out and touches him, as if trying to comfort him. At first, Ryzen tries to stop her. However, she uses her power to force his body to stay still. Surprisingly, instead of making him uncomfortable, her actions actually help him calm down. For the first time in a long while, Ryzen finally opens up to someone about what he truly feels regarding the incident from years ago. He realizes that he has been suffering from survivor's guilt ever since his brother died. His older brother was a great person, someone loved by everyone in the community. Because of that, Ryzen always felt that he was the one to blame for his brother's tragic death. When he was rescued back then, instead of being comforted, his parents asked him why he was the one who survived. At that moment, Ryzen realized that because of his brother, he would never receive the same love from others. After that, people looked at him with silent, judging eyes. Because of this, he stopped bonding with others altogether. The only person who truly cared for him was his uncle, Dasaki, who lived in Tokyo. For a long time, Ryzen felt completely alone. He was lonely most of the time, and pretending to be strong only made things harder. Hearing all of this makes the monster sympathize with him. Surprisingly, she tries to comfort him, assuring him that she will always stay by his side from now on. After moving to this new city, Ryzen finally gained a girlfriend and a friend. To him, they feel too good to deserve someone like him. That is why, for the first time, Ryzen gently asks the girl to give him his normal life back. However, it seems that this will never truly happen. Over the next few days, Ryzen slowly gets used to living with her. Ever since Uncle Dasaki visited, Ryzen begins carefully watching the monster's movements at night. What unsettles him the most is that she never leaves his side while he sleeps, yet from time to time she disappears for hours. Not long after, the bodies of new victims from the strange murder cases are discovered. The third case happened right after Kiyoko visited his apartment. The others occurred while Ryzen was away as well. Although his theory is still forming, the pattern is becoming clear. Since it has only been 5 days since he started observing her, Ryzen remains cautious and discreet. No matter how closely he watches her, there are no clear signs to follow. In fact, it seems like she simply enjoys teasing him throughout the night. Looking at her beautiful face, Ryzen reminds himself that she is not the real Mayara. If this monster truly killed her and consumed her organs, then human blood alone may not be her only source of food. Her behavior toward him is strange and confusing. Deep inside, Ryzen wonders why she has not killed him yet, if she truly needs humans to survive. After confirming his suspicions, he becomes even more careful. If another victim appears soon, her guilt will be undeniable. Even if Ryzen wants to turn her into the police, he knows she would vanish instantly. That is why he decides to play along with her for now. Once he has undeniable proof, he plans to get rid of her himself. One night, he pins her down on the bed. For the first time, Ryzen is on top of her. However, his intention is not what it seems. He plans to strangle her. But the moment he realizes that killing her would feel no different from killing a human, he hesitates and pulls back. That hesitation disappears instantly when he hears the news. A new victim has been found. And this time, it is not just anyone. Akutsu Jr., Ryzen's best friend, has been discovered dead, his organs removed. At that moment, everything inside Ryzen goes numb. For the first time, he does not hesitate. He decides that this monster must be killed, no matter what. At this moment, Ryzen begins to reminisce about his memories with Junior. He remembers a time when he asked Junior why he even bothered getting involved with someone like him. Since Ryzen was used to people hating him because of what happened to his brother, he assumed Junior would eventually feel the same way. Ryzen was fully aware of his own flaws. He knew he was gloomy, distant, and afraid of people. Because of that, he believed he had no real merits as a person. Hearing Ryzen talk this way made Junior visibly annoyed. To Junior, friendship was not about someone's strengths or weaknesses. Spending time with someone based on merit alone was not friendship at all. To reassure him, Junior explained his reason in the most creative and honest way he could. Hearing how genuine and down-to-earth Junior was, Ryzen couldn't help but feel happy. He felt truly thankful for the friendship Junior had given him. That is why, after learning that Junior was dead, Ryzen could no longer hold back his anger toward the girl. Without hesitation, he demands to know if she was the one who killed Junior, and the neighbors as well. Instead of answering, the girl simply reaches out, trying to hug him. However, Ryzen is not in the mood for comfort. He feels like he has been played. Just the other day, he had opened up to her about how important Junior and Kiyoko were to him. Knowing that she may have committed such a horrifying act after hearing that makes him feel deeply betrayed. Thinking about how painful, terrifying, and lonely Junior's final moments must have been makes Ryzen feel sick. Junior only got involved with him, and that connection to this monster ended up costing him his life. It feels as though Ryzen himself pulled the trigger. The guilt crushes him. What makes it worse is that, without realizing it, he almost allowed his emotions toward this monster to sway him. If he had realized the truth earlier, he would have already gone all in. For the first time, Ryzen strikes the girl and tells her to get away from him. He no longer wants her touching him, especially knowing those hands are the same ones that killed Junior. Even as he hits her again and again, the woman refuses to let go. Trembling, she continues to hug him, but fueled by rage, Ryzen hits her harder this time. He reminds himself that no matter how innocent her eyes look, she is still a monster, the one who drinks his blood every night, feeds on human organs, and took Junior's life. However, despite the anger Ryzen feels right now, seeing the girl cry as he hits her makes him feel guilty about what he is doing. At that moment, Ryzen remembers what Junior once told him, that he can be cold and tyrannical. Even though he beat her badly, the girl still managed to smile at him. Instead of fighting back, she suddenly kissed him on the lips, reminding him that the love she has for him is endless. And just like that, the girl disappeared. By carrying this heavy guilt and sacrifice in his heart, Ryzen was able to return to his normal daily life. After such an intense experience, he eventually fell asleep from exhaustion and stress. However, every time he woke up, he still could not accept the fact that his friend was dead. To him, it still did not feel real. After that incident, the girl did not appear for a long time. During this period, Ryzen began to question why the monster never used her powers on him. He also wondered why his emotions felt so confused and unstable. Then suddenly, he received a call from Kiyoko. Without hesitation, he answered it right away. On the other end, Kiyoko sounded shaken and distressed. She told Ryzen that she needed to see him immediately and talk to him in person. However, it was not for the reason he expected. While crying on the phone, Kiyoko said something that completely confused Ryzen. She told him that she believes she might be the one who actually killed Junior.
Please!
Subscribe.
I need this! My mom is kind of homeless.